What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Serious Angler Podcast, powered by our friends over at X2 Power Batteries. We're back with the captain, Mr. Andy Full, and as always, I am your host, Bailey Eichbrett. Andy, what's going on, dude?
Oh, not a whole lot. What's up with you?
Dude, it is, for people that know me and know that what I do working in the industry
it's grind time for you right now.
My boss calls it Hell Week because it's ICAST, and our first guest of tonight, Tom Redington, knows exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to ICAST craziness. It's just madness, dude, because I mean, it's honestly ICAST for me in my position honestly starts probably February timeframe. It's honestly probably when it starts getting materials, things like that. Just not to bore people, but yeah, it's a long road. But then, like, it seems like the 2 weeks before, it is like crunch time to like get everything done to the people that need to have information, get everything set up, and you have meeting with media and all that stuff, and it's just mayhem. But on the bright side of it is, one, I do enjoy it, but two, the other side, as I love to see everybody. That's my favorite thing. Just everybody from the industry. It's especially us being from New York. We don't have too many industry folk up this way.
Yeah, we don't get to venture out all too often. Well, you get to venture out more than I do, but yeah, you get to see them a lot more.
Well, I mean, on trips here and there, right? It's a select group, but for the most part, like the classic, ICAST, things like that that's the time to go see everybody. Right. I thoroughly enjoy it. ICAST time, I don't know, for people that haven't been there, it is a lot of like salesy, political things here and there, people trying to drop new baits and products every which way. The normal ICAST, gamut, but for the most part, ICAST is actually a really good time. It's kind of like a big party almost, if that makes any sense.
One of these years I'll make my way there to party with you guys.
It is a good time. It's a great place to go network and talk with people, things like that. So I'm looking forward to seeing some of our show partners down there. It's gonna be a good time. But dude, July 4th break is over. It was a nice 4 days off of work and chilling with my family. Came up from Florida, so that was cool. They had rented an Airbnb and had a little pond in the back too. So my dad and I snuck away for most of the time that they're away and fished the pond for a while, throwing frogs and things like that. So it's
a smart move to get out of the chatty small talk of the wives, right? Like, I'm going fishing.
Yeah. While they're out of earshot, that's what we'll say.
Yeah. While they're out of earshot, yes.
Yeah, no, it was just good to get away because they had a place out in like almost the middle of nowhere. So it was kind of nice to get away from like the city of Buffalo.
Yeah.
We have neighbors lighting off fireworks and everything, which I'm all about the firework things. Hey, bro, it's 2 a.m. Like, dude, come on now, man. Like, so, you get it.
4th of July. It sounded like World War II going off of my house. And I'm pretty sure someone was shooting off a 9mm just like straight up in the air because it sounded like a 9mm going off at one point. I was like, what the heck? And I sent the video to one of my buddies. He goes, is somebody popping off caps like with a 9mm over there? People across the street were singing karaoke in their front driveway till like 11 p.m. Like, I heard Freebird. I heard like Molly Hatchet. Like, I'm like, man, those guys know how to party. There's like 70 cars up and down my street. Like, fireworks literally every house except for ours. I'm like, I couldn't even sleep. I had to guide the next morning. It was terrible.
You're just probably singing karaoke until you had
pretty much. Like, I woke up at 4 and I'm like, oh man, that song's stuck in my head still. Great.
Mom, where's Dad? Oh, he's singing karaoke.
He's just flirting with disaster, He's
right. Good grief. Well, Well, so yeah, great July 4th break. Hope everyone had enjoyed it and was smart for the most part. I know there's some people that are like, America, which I'm all about that, but hopefully you were smart for the most part and avoided any trouble. But
sounds like a whole lot of freedom out there.
As it should. Just we can wait till the morning for freedom. We don't need 2 a.m. freedom.
Yeah,
need sleep.
It's fair. So
ICAST coming up next week. Quick note for folks is we're not going to have a live show next Tuesday night. I will be down at ICAST Monday through Friday, so it'll just kind of be tricky to try to do a show Tuesday night. So we're gonna Andy and I will work this week to try to get a pre-recorded show out for you guys Tuesday morning. So take note of that. We're gonna try to have a show next week. It'll just be a pre-recorded versus a live show per usual. But this Friday night, I will be going on Rudd's. If you guys know Alex Rudd, going on his podcast. We're going to do a little ICAST preview, which I'm sure you'll see across the gamut of every YouTube / podcast. We'll do a ICAST preview show at some point. We'll be doing Rudd's Friday night. And the week following that, we have Barden coming back on the show. Stephen Barden, my fisheries biologist buddy. And he's bringing a friend. I'm not going to disclose that guest just yet, but it's going to be, there's some big things happening.
Barden +1. Oh,
Barden +1. He's got a +1. That's right. There's some big things happening in bass fishing that aren't being talked about right now. And it's not, I'll let a little bit out of the bag here because I honestly don't want to steal too much of the thunder from Ken Dukes, the one that actually informed me about it. He's going to keep an eye out on Bass After Dark / Big Bass Podcast because they're going to have a whole thing about it. But there are new species of bass being created, like several right now, that are being added to the list, and the naming of the bass right now has been changed, which is crazy. So things are changing big time in the world.
Are we talking about like the Scott Martin video, Gorilla Bass, that he just put out the other day? Like in that one lake where it's like a mix between a Florida strain and F1?
I hadn't seen that one yet.
Yeah,
but no, it's not that. So like all these scientific terms for bass are changed. So I'm not going to try to quote it. I don't have the brain cells to do it, which is why we're having Barden on and his buddy, who are the ones involved with all of this. So that's going to be part of the conversation, but we have even more stuff to bring Barden on. And it's going to be a longer show for that one. So looking forward to that the week after ICAST, which I think is like the 20th.
That's sweet.
So that's going to be a great show. Beyond that, I love to get our first guest on here. Andy, before we do, any Lure Lab people can look forward to for this weekend?
Well, we actually have a good episode that hopefully we can get recorded barring any weather the next few days. But I don't know if you saw Robert G. I want to make sure I say his last name right. He was throwing the bait down at Smith Lake, and we're going to have, Juice's Jigs coming on for Saturday. We're going to talk about a different style of forward-facing minnow bait to catch a bunch of bass. So that one's going to be pretty good.
Yeah, and when you talk about different bait too, to add on top of that, I don't know if people saw Big Bite Baits. They posted a reel with the informative fisherman saying they're coming out with a brand new category of soft baits, which they didn't give any sort of inkling or anything to it. But they did their job. They piqued curiosity, so I'll be interested to see what they come out with.
Now Big Bite Baits is owned by GSM? Is it GSM? I think. They're owned by a bigger parent company. I'm pretty sure they got.
No, I don't think it's GSM. I could be wrong, but I want to say it's the conglomerate with like Spro and shoot. I'm trying to remember. Somebody in the comments knows what we're talking about.
Whoever that parent company is, I can't think of it off the top of my head. But
Tom, shake your head yes or no if you know what we're talking about. He does. Okay, we should just bring him in because he knows way more than we do.
Fair enough.
All right. Without further ado, let's get him in here. Mr. Tom Redington, what's going on?
Hey, guys.
Hey,
how we doing?
Good.
Good to be here.
I think Andy and I should honestly just leave and then we just have you talk because it's we don't know crap. So I bring on you guys. But Big Bite's not GSM, right?
It is GSM. Acquired Big Bite Baits July 10th. Well, almost 1 year ago today.
Oh,
right. Yeah. Tomorrow will be the 1 year anniversary of GSM purchasing Big Bite Baits.
I thought they used to be though in like a whole umbrella deal with Spro and a couple others, right? Am I wrong there?
No, I think Big Bite Baits for the longest time was like their own company, and then they got bought out.
Was it
GSM?
Spro Yamagatsu? I'm trying to remember. I can't remember what that whole deal was. But either way, sorry about that, Tom. Rabbit holes, what you can see the show is all about here. But before we get any further, and because I know the things we're going to talk about tonight, we're going to go down tangents 100%. And this is your first time on the show, so we love to do it with everybody. That's their first time on this podcast. Is throw it back to the very beginning. Who is to blame for this lifelong addiction that make you wear a shirt that has a bass on it that says "I'm not fat, I'm pre-spawn"? Oh, you got us?
Yeah, I'm not fat. I'm pre-spawn, right?
Yeah. I think we might have a lag here.
I think so.
Uh-oh. Is it that hurricane internet going on in Texas right now? Oh, shoot. You got us, Tom?
Yeah, we catch back up. Should be good. We good now?
I think we're good now. You got us?
Yeah,
now?
I got you now. We're back.
Perfect. Welcome. Gotta love technology.
Yeah. Seamless.
Yeah. So, dudes, throw it back all the way to the beginning.
Yeah, so you said just go back. You know, it was a friend of the family that did, and my dad didn't fish at all. Nobody in my family did, and it's just one of those things. It's like there's a chromosome or a gene or something. Like all of us that have it, you catch a fish, and like all of a sudden, most people are like, "Oh, that was cool. Let's go swim for a little bit now." And then there's the other like 0.001 of us, like the three of us and everybody watching tonight, that it's like, oh my God, I want to catch everyone that's ever swam and the biggest one in every species and all that. And that then mixed with growing up on the farm, we had a river there that I could ride my bike down to, and it fed into the upper Mississippi and had smallmouth bass. So we started off catfishing and carp fishing stuff, worm and bobber, and all of a sudden a guy comes downstream and he catches a fish on a worm, and this thing starts jumping all over. My brother and I are like, "What's that thing?" He's like, "Well, it's a smallmouth." And we're like, "What's a smallmouth?" And he's like, "I don't know, it's a bass." It's like, "Oh, it jumps." Like, so we were like ate up with it then. So we were all about it. Plus the real kicker was that if you got on your bike and you went down to the river early, that was before cell phones. Dad couldn't put you to work doing anything. So basically we love to fish, but I love to get out of work. So between the combination of the two, that's what I've been doing for about 20, 30, 40 years now.
That's awesome, dude. So where along that line did you start diving into bass specific and really getting into the tournament side as well? I know you mentioned earlier you have a whole different timeline when it comes to the fishing side. You kind of touched a lot of bases.
Yeah, so by the time I worked jobs and stuff in college at a marina, at resorts and stuff that had private lakes where I could get access to a boat. Didn't have a boat, but that was used to be on a flat bottom with a 6-horse Merc go around there. Didn't even have a trolling motor. I figured out if you throw a big spinner bait, if you pulled to the one side and had enough thump, you could steer your boat with the wind left and right. I mean, that's how low tech I was. Awesome. But through college was ate up with it. And then I worked in the upper Midwest for about 5 years in consumer products, selling with GE at the time, who was one of the powerhouses. And so I got to fish a lot of the upper Midwest, really enjoyed that, but then fell in love with fishing in Texas and wanted to get down here. So I moved to Texas, found a job down here, worked another 5 years in sales, and got to the Dallas area, wanted to fish fork. And then after 10 years in the corporate world, I punched out, guided for, it was over 10 years on fork. And at the same time, then I started tournament fishing, worked my way up, fishing a few weekender stuff, and basically fishing. It was the old, it's the Toyotas now, but the Strens and all that stuff to qualify for the FLW tour. And then I've been fishing that now for 10 plus years, which turned into the pro circuit and the Tackle Warehouse Invitationals.
Yeah. And you've been with a lot of big names, from, the Scott Martins of the world. And so you've kind of been around the block, man. Well, that's kind of be a big help in regards to not just networking, but I feel like the expertise and the know-how and some of the small things that maybe some people that haven't been in the industry as long might not understand or know at this point?
Yeah, it's a kind of unique mix where I came up with that sales and marketing background. So I worked in consumer products. I sat on the other side of the table of the fishermen. I was trying to sell products. We would sponsor people or do trade shows, be the selling people. So I understand, what retailers are looking for, what sellers are looking for, what we're looking for in marketing. And then I did the co-angler bit for a while. So I drew guys like KBD and Shaw Grigsby, Roland Martin. I mean, I got to go with some Gary Klein, some of the top guys there. And then I roomed with Scott Martin for pretty much most of my time on tour. And then we wrapped in over the years, guys like Wheeler was in there for a little bit, John Cox for a long time, B-Lat, and a lot of guys. You get to see how these top guys tick. And then these days I've done some industry consulting using some of that marketing. For a while, I was back in the day, I was with Dobbins Rods. I worked with Gary quite a bit and helped do their newsletter and stuff, and really got to pick his brain and see the industry from that side. And now with Pure Fishing, with Berkeley and Abu Garcia, Fenwick, brands like that, I get to help promote stuff. I've done some social work with them and copywriting and stuff. So it's a neat perspective, seeing it from all different angles, and how somebody like a Roland and Scott or a Wheeler and Cox, how their mind thinks versus being a fanboy, just getting started and everywhere in between. So it's been a neat ride.
Yeah. And so I'm going to come at this from a different perspective here for you. And I'm curious your opinion. So for me, a lot of folks like yourself, Andy, I'm sure as well, like growing up in this industry from a fan perspective, it was a lot of TV. It was the Hank Parker show. There was, Scott Martin Challenge. There's different things along the lines of that. I had that, but I feel like I also, being in my mid-20s, I had the tail end of the best TV that also at the beginning of the YouTube era. And that's where I first learned about you, was watching you on the Scott Martin YouTube channel when you guys would travel together, things like that. So with that, and traveling with some of the greatest that are still fishing right now, what is one of the wildest, maybe traditions, not the word I'm looking for. What's the word I'm looking for? Basically, what is like one of the wildest habits of some of the greatest fishermen right now that you've seen them do? Like if it's a nightly ritual, that's what I'm looking for, ritual, like a nightly ritual before a tournament or practice ritual. What's some of the weirdest things that you've seen in regards to that? Some of these greats do.
Yeah, and I would say honestly, it's the weirdest thing or the most unexpected. It's nothing out of the ordinary. It's the ordinary. It's the fact that they are so laser focused. Like all those guys are fun, and if you catch them at ICAST or something and hanging out, and Cox loves to play like the just good natured, he's like the Chris Farley or something of fishing, but they're like so they're so focused in. You try to I've fished all day. It's been a long day. I want to cut up a little bit in the evenings or something. And those guys don't want to do anything other than talk about bass fishing. They're just like, it's just like laser focused fishing 100%. And then the other thing is like, we talk about like, man, wow, YouTube's taking off. I should do something. Or, wow, guys are really catching them on that jig head minnow right now. We just kind of like, we get a few and play around with it or something. That's like Scott, I've been around. I saw with the whole thing with when YouTube started taking off, he didn't just say, that's interesting. I mean, he went out, bought cameras, hired the cameraman, got 100% ahead of it. When he won Angler of the Year, like a few of us on the Garmin team had the Panoptics, the early one, but it's kind of like, well, this weird thing. It's kind of neat. I can just watch some fish. And when they do it, they go all in. And you've seen any of the guys? I remember Kelly Jordan was like the big angling hero at Lake Fork back in the day when he was just, I mean, if you guys don't remember back then, I mean, he would dominate all the sight fishing tournaments, was winning all the time. And all those guys, one of the common things is you saw with Wheeler and stuff, they're single, they're younger, they're road. I mean, they just fish every single day, and they're just out there after it and after it and after. And you see with so many guys, they get married, they start to have a family, and you just can't commit that your entire life to fishing. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, you have to. It's a natural progression, but the guys that are really at the top of the game, I mean, it really comes down to nothing other than the fact they are 100% in it. I mean, they're great at it, but I mean, that's all they do, all they think about, just obsessed with it.
Yeah, that is a great point. It's interesting, the angle of family, and I've heard that direction talked about a few times, where it's the guys that have the ability to go and be on the water and travel all day, every day, because they don't have a wife and kids to take care of at that time. But also I've seen where it's the guys that travel on their own, leave their family at home, struggle, and then you see them the next season and they travel with their wife and kids, and they have a completely flip-flop season. Like, it's so much better, because it's crazy how that plays such a big role in this sport, where, like the Big Four, it's, you play a game, you see your family afterwards. It's completely different, where it's something that, like, people talk about how it's a, full-time truck driver, part-time fisherman. I think that really comes to play into that, that's a good angle to look from.
It just has to be the most mentally demanding sport one could choose to play, because there's so many outside factors that press on you on a daily basis that can distract you from bass fishing. If you're distracted from bass fishing, you're going to fall behind really fast. I see it on guiding. Like, if I take 3 or 4 days off because of wind, right? I go out there the next time out, I'm like, oh God, where did my fish go? Now I have to go re-find them all over again. And it becomes this huge, long process. Dang smallmouth.
I don't know. We say that, but then, like, Keith Poche just throws a swamp lord, a pit boss, and another pit boss, and he just figured out where he can get his boat into. That's all he's got to worry about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of us aren't that lucky.
I know. But
or good.
Right. Well, Tom, you talked about natural progression. And one thing I'm curious about, being around the sport for a while, but also being on Fork for several years now, how surprised were you to see, or not surprised, were you to see how big the weights were this year at Fork for the elites?
Yeah, I thought they were good. I mean, they caught some big ones there. It's just, I mean, that lake is so fickle, and live scope, definitely forward facing, it has helped with that, get more consistency, because those fish, like it used to be in the spring, there would be those sweet spot weeks where they would come to the bank and you could get them. But in between, they just went, we knew they were out in the trees. You would throw a jerk bait, but it was just randomly throwing it out there. And, now you can actually pinpoint them. So at Fork, nothing really surprised me. The weights out there, honestly, like it's one of those, if you have a 20-pound bag anywhere else in the country, it's like, oh, caught them pretty good. There, that means you had 5 4-pounders. Like, nobody drives to Lake Fork to catch 4-pounders. Nobody drives to Lake Fork to catch 6-pounders. Now, if you caught 100, like any other lake, like, holy cow, we got 106-pounders. There, like, I mean, that's a little bit of hyperbole, but basically you can go out and catch 35 fish in a day's time, and your biggest is 8. And when somebody caught the 8, they may say, if they're from Wisconsin, their biggest ever is a 5. They're pretty stoked about it, as am I. I mean, that's not a small fish. But if it's somebody who's from Texas, they say, man, that thing pulled hard. I really thought it was a big one. You're talking about 8-pounder. Like, and then you hear yourself say that, you're like, did I seriously say that I thought that fish was a big one, but it's only 8? So it's, you have 5 for 35. The goal is to catch a 10-pounder when you come to Fork. So it's, you had an 8 and a 6 and some 7s in there. It's like, that's a nice day, but it's like, you don't really brag to your buddies until you have something, into a 40-pound string. So it's just, it's one of those that it's hard to go home happy there. If you're guiding, your guide customers are happy. If you catch one great big one, that can save a day, but it's also one of those, it's like going to the World Series. Like, oh, wow, I made it to the World Series of the Super Bowl. But if you don't win it, it's kind of a failure, even though it was like a really good year. That's kind of that's the problem with fork.
I feel your pain. Like, smallmouth and guiding stuff. I'm like, oh god, 4-pounder, that's little. And the client's like, that's the biggest smallmouth I've ever caught. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's just a normal fish. Like,
Yeah,
it's so hard to cross that line to get excited for that fish when your clients are like, wow, and you're like, oh yeah, it's a good one.
Now the flip side is I had a guy customer, only one I ever had like this, but I had 2 guys from Texas, and they had a buddy come. It was like Vermont or New Hampshire or something, came down. All good bass fishermen, but the guy who came from north, not quite as good, and he just heard about fork, the legend of fork. So we go out, and it's about an hour into the morning. We get a couple fish, and he hooks into one, and that's what we're throwing. It was the live magic shad at the time, but like a swim bait, basically, of the big version of that. Hooks into this one, and it jumps, and it comes all the way out of the water about 20 feet from us, and it's clear this is a double-digit fish. Like, oh my god! Comes in towards the boat, throws the hook, just comes off, and the 2 Texans and I are just like about ready to vomit, just like, oh my god! And this guy, first time before, he's like, that's all right, we'll get another one. We're just thinking, okay, it's power positive thinking or something like that. Like, all right. And like in his mind, he thought he was going to get, okay, I've had a shot at a double digit hour into this thing. We're going to get more of these. And every hour of the trip as it went on, and, the morning bites starts to fizzle. It's more of a grind. And, we catch like a nice 5 or something. And that guy started just saying, he like every 30 minutes, like, man, that was a big fish, wasn't it? Like, yeah, that's like huge. He just saw me. He went from, oh my god, this is gonna be the best trip of my life, to, oh, this is like maybe the worst moment of my life. Just slowly sinking in, and him hunching over all day. I felt so bad for him.
Poor guy.
Yeah, that's. I think we can all relate to that. Where it's just until you get that moment clicks where you completely forget. That moment when you lose a big one just completely just wrenches your, like, it's painful right in the gut.
Oh.
Here we go.
I'm thinking about all. Yeah, that's a good one.
He comments and said, "That's it. I'm booking a trip with Andrew. I'm going to harass him constantly about the lack of 7-pound smallies. Negative review incoming."
7-pound smallmouth is a unicorn, man. Like, I don't care what anyone says. They're so hard to come by. So hard. I've gotten close a couple times. Bailey almost got a 7 on my boat last year, but it's not easy.
The key is to not try.
Yes,
that's how you catch your 7.
That's so true.
So, Tom, we're in the boat. We have Sean Budiak from X2 Power in the boat with us. And so I'm in the back. Those 2 are trying to catch Sean's PB. And I'm farting around. I'm trying really weird stuff, just messing around. And I tie on a really janky drop shot, like horrible knot. Like, I think I had like the tag end of the leader still on too. And I just bomb this thing out there. And I'm like just screwing around with it and feel a bite. I reel into it. And I'm just like, we're just having a good time.
I don't think it's that big, and I see it on forward. I'm like, dude, you have a giant. He's like, oh no, I don't.
It didn't feel big because it was running at me, and it comes up and jumps, and Andy and I simultaneously were like, oh my god! Yeah, it was 614, so it just barely missed.
And the crazier part is our buddy was like 100 yards away, and like, was it 30 minutes or 45 minutes earlier, he put a 7 in the boat, like maybe 100 yards away from us. So we're like, oh my gosh, like insane.
Yeah. Well, and you, Tom, you got some crazy guide stories by the sounds of it, because you'd mentioned one to me prior to this show of one about a complete giant on a guide or a guide client that you might not favor very much.
It's a crazy story. It's a cool guy. And he brought, so it was him and I think it was his brother and his dad came down, nice guys, fished a lot for crappie, but really didn't fish for bass. And they were IT guys. So I'm a sales guy. You tell, just like diarrhea of the mouth, never stop talking, blah, 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 and they're a little quieter. And, so it's like two different worlds hitting there a little bit, but the fishing's the great equalizer, and they start biting. And the day before, this front comes in, and it's been a little slow, and we get in the back of a pocket, and they're throwing spinning rods, and thankfully there's not a whole lot of timber around there or grass. And it's real shallow flat, and they go to biting. And these guys, we just destroy them that afternoon, just one after another, nice ones. There's 3 1/4 up to like 7, so good ones. And for these guys are from the upper Midwest, so these are nice. They're some of the biggest fish they ever caught. Well, the next day the front comes through, and it's like the trap door comes down. I mean, it's cold, and there's snow flurries flying and stuff. Terrible waves. So I'm like, man, it's gonna be rough. But these are the type of days, like the post frontal, like I get numbers before it, but after it slows. It's when I catch a big one often. So we go to the back, straight across to another creek, and this guy's throwing his lipless on this. I mean, it's like a crappie pole, like a 6-foot, like medium light or something. And they were laboring to get like 4-pounders in. Well, he throws it, and there's a thicket of cedar trees, flooded cedar trees, and he snakes a cast in there. It's just between like all the stuff, puts it right through there, and it throws that lipless, and he hooks into one, and he just bows up, and like you can't tell on that spinning rod, you can't tell if it's a 3-pounder or a 47-pounder. I mean, it's just doubled over. This thing makes a beeline straight for the boat, comes right at us, and it's an 11.6. It just swims miraculously through the trees, comes right to the boat. We scoop him up. I mean, if he moved left or right, gone. But it just like it's his day to happen. So he catches 11.6, and put him in. Cameras. He's all excited, and get the official weight and stuff. Let it go right there. Awesome day and stuff. Well, it turns out when you're 3 people, there's like a surcharge on the thing, and they came up a little bit short on cash. So it's like, no big deal. Hey, I'll go home. I'll PayPal you the rest or whatever. He ended up, it was only like $50, but it's literally the biggest guide customer fish that I ever put a guide customer on. Was the only customer who short paid me ever in my career guiding. And I just think it's like, to me, it's like the craziest thing that he didn't mean to slight me. And I'm sure he just forgot about it. I didn't want to be like the rude guy saying like, hey dude, you owe me. They paid plenty to do it. But to me, it just strikes me as that's guiding in a nutshell. You do your best job ever. It's the one you don't get paid full for.
It's always the IT guys. Always.
Yeah. And I distinctly remember that weight too, because the crazy part was we caught an 11.6 that day, and then the next day we came back, had another guy. It was a father-son trip, and his dad caught a 10.5 the next day. So we had 11.6 that day, and about 100 yards down, we catch a 10.5 the next day. So that was a fun couple of days right there.
And the next day, did you catch a 9.4?
Well, that's what I was telling the guy in the morning. I remember saying that. I'm like, dude, I'm sorry, you're not going to get a double digit, but all right with the 9.4. We didn't. That was the second day after the front where it turned like sunny and slick and started getting warm again. And as I recall, we didn't catch a whole lot of anything that day. That was just you want to cut this one early? Yeah.
Yeah. Better to just go to the house at that point when you get conditions like that. That's cool though, man. I guess you're just going to start getting guide clients that don't pay you fully. They're just going to wait till after the trip now. What has been the guiding like down on Forkin in Texas? Obviously, the big boom with Ivy, and it seems like there's some people that have begun to start guiding down there. So is it? I got to imagine since COVID, the amount of guides has boomed in Texas.
Yeah, and honestly, that's in the last. I guess I've been out of it for 5 years now. So the guide part, just with the travel, and felt like I needed to 100% focus on like catching more fish in Texas and more on Fork really wasn't going to help. So I kind of tried to allocate more time to, fishing out of state and stuff. So I've got out of it a little bit, but it's still thriving on Fork. It's it's so close to Dallas. It's huge. It's a the guide community out there is still as robust as ever. A lot of guys fill in out at Ivy and a lot of local lakes, and it's it's an interesting lifestyle. The neatest thing that I saw with guide fishing, and a little bit kind of spills into the confidence part of the sport, but it's like this weird dichotomy of fishing where you never have hard and fast rules. So the neat thing, when you would guide, you could set up customers as your little lab. And if you were trying to throw lipless or something, and it was remarkable, lipless crankbaits back in the day before the chatter baits and bladed jigs, all that, and square bills, that's what dominated in the grass. And you would put, one guy would have a 1/2 ounce gold Cordell spot, another one would have an orange Bill Lewis rattle trap, and somebody might have like a Strike King, whatever, the red eye or something. And you would go, and all of a sudden, you think if they were biting it, they would kind of bite anything. All of a sudden, the guy in the back would have an orange one, and it'd be a 1/2 ounce. And you think, well, he's just fishing a little slower, a little different or something like that. And he would go to like starting to wear out the boat. So all of a sudden you put that one on for his buddy in front of him, and then he's like the vacuum cleaner, just shuts him down. And you would think that once you figure it out, it's for a week. It just lasts day after day. And it was so weird from day to day. It would be specific. You'd have to have the Excalibur 1 knocker in Royal Shad, 3/4 ounce. The 1 ounce would, you get a couple bites, like the half wouldn't. I mean, it was so specific. It's like you have the magic bait. Now the flip side would be when we would fish with like laminate baits in the summertime, you would have all worms and stuff. So it might be like green pumpkin on the one side, June bug on the other. And all these baits, they have kind of, to me, like a top or a bottom, or where the seam is, you hook them up right with rig them. So say something, it had the June bug on top. I just rig a June bug on top all the time because that's the way the eyes were, and it's way better. So you Carolina rig it, and you get on a school, and these guys kind of go to stroking them pretty good. And the guy would catch like 5 fish or something. Then after you get one, you would rig up his bait, and you'd say, man, do you remember, was I putting the purple on the top or was I putting the green on the top? And of course I know, but he's like, he doesn't know which. He's like, yeah, I think it was the green. I'm not sure, or the purple. And so you rig it up the way it had been the whole time. He'd start throwing it out there. 2 casts without a fish. All of a sudden you'd be like, yeah, maybe it was the green that was on top there. I mean, you would break this guy's confidence in 2 casts. And if he goes like 5 without it, like he's like self-doubting it, and then you flip it over. You're like, you want me to switch it for you? And I'd switch it over to the other side, and then he doesn't catch a couple more. It's like, man, I don't know. And they're just like, he's like day over. Like, and then I finally, you would stifle the smile, but finally have to tell the poor guy, like, look, dude, I always rig with the purple up. You're fine. Don't worry about it. But man, it's amazing how it shouldn't be like a confidence thing, but that kind of goes to show. Yes, sometimes it really matters on the bait, but most of it's right here, and you're breaking yourself,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, shoot, Andy, you've been having a lot of time to tinker with stuff like that. I mean, have you noticed with smallmouth on Eerie with the pressure rising that it's very specific now?
Yeah, it's getting in. There's like days, right? Like 3-4 days will be on one color, and then next 2 days will be on a different color. So like on my guide trips, I do the same thing. I have 2-3 different color baits and types of baits, and whatever one's hot is the one we run. And then that bite pattern lasts for 2 or 3 days on the school of fish. And then the next school of fish, it's something completely different. I feel like you need 10 spinning rods with 10 different things every day at this point, because the pressure on all of our fishers is out of control. And it's just trying to stay ahead.
Yeah. Well, so staying ahead brings me to another point that you'd mentioned to me, Tom, which I find this story, I don't even know where to take this. So I'm just gonna throw it out there. But you talk about, you said you had one of the original viral videos on YouTube on how to make a homemade Alabama rig. Yeah, tell us about this one.
Yeah. Well, YouTube started. Nobody knew. I mean, YouTube was just out there, and I'm a fisherman, or I'm a guide, or whatever. Like nobody was really making many fishing videos at all. This is way before the Gilligan Squad. I mean, there was just no content out there. And all of a sudden the Alabama rig pops, and it's it's all of a sudden it's taking over fishing. Nobody can get their hands on one. Well, I see this post somebody makes on one of the, back when we had fishing forums, somebody made this little, like, they took like some wire and stuff, and some guys were taking egg beaters and stuff and doing it, but they kind of made this really nasty one. Well, I'm like, I can make something better than that. So I go to Depot and I got like survey flags. So I cut the wire off there and a couple of crimps. Well, you could make one. I mean, you can't even get them. And if you can, they're getting eBay's big at the time and stuff. I'm going to go on $50 to $100, and it's just crazy. So I make the title, and it was clickbait before clickbait, but it was actually legit. It's like, make a Alabama rig in under 5 minutes, or under $5 in under 5 minutes. And my kid was young at the time, so I got him in there. So I've got, the cute little talent and stuff. And it's like, if a 6-year-old can do this thing, crimp it and put it together, it's like, boom, a couple swivels and stuff, you got it. Like, so this thing, like, right away it catches, and like Bassmaster, In Fisherman, you name it, all the places picked it up and shared it out. And this thing, like, within about 24 hours goes to 100,000 views. Back when, like, that's like, I mean, nobody's getting 100,000 views. It's just like, boom, it's like everywhere. Well, yeah. The next thing I hear, I get this message, and it's like a buddy from the Alabama of the Alabama rig people, and other people are starting to knock it off, and I can't blame the guy. It's not throwing any shade. He was defending it and say, I've got it patented, I've got the name, copyright, all this stuff. So he's sending out cease and desist, and he's going to sue, and rightly so, if he totally knocked it off. Well, he says, like, yeah, you're going to get a cease and desist, and it's patented. You can't even say the name in it. And I'm thinking, well, Ford says Chevy in their ads and stuff. I don't know. And if you look at patent law, you can, if somebody has something patented, you can make it to test it to see if it's actually what they say it is, but you can't use it. You can't make it for even your own personal use. So I thought, man, I do not want to get, like, when this thing is like the biggest one, I don't want to get in this major lawsuit. So I'm like, what do I care? You're not getting paid for YouTube clicks at the time. Like, I don't need this. So I have to, like, take it down. I have to send off to, like, buddy at the In Fisherman and Bassmaster and all this stuff. Like, sorry, dudes, like, this got to go away. Well, piracy is been around before the second internet started. So there was a Korean kind of knockoff YouTube that they took it up and reposted it. So then everybody's linking it to that. And, like, it's me in it and stuff. I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to get sued over this thing. So I had to call the U.S. consulate in the embassy in Korea, South Korea. And this, I completely, somebody picked up, I talked to this guy. He's like, yeah, we don't normally get in it, but I get it. He must have been a fisherman or something, because he just like, yeah, I get it, dude. He's like, let me see. I'll just send a email over to somebody in their government. And it was like, in like 3 minutes, apparently, like, they saw this message from the U.S. government. All of a sudden, it's like, boom, it just went out everywhere. So I stopped it before it got out again. But, like, it was my one chance for become, like, YouTube famous, and then I lost that chance.
Oh, jeez. And now it's banned.
Probably never posted another video for like a year.
Terrified. I don't blame you.
All that just because of the freaking Alabama rig.
I was ahead of the curve on clickbait. See, I should have been clickbaiting everybody. But.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, shoot, those are the kind of things that are like why some of the biggest YouTubers now are biggest YouTubers, because they had one video back then that literally just blew up, and then since then, has ridden the foundation of what they are now with their channels. Like, it's you could date that for a bunch of the Guggen guys, I'm sure, and some guys around that time. Yeah, I'm sure Scott has one that popped that helped him build that foundation. So that's crazy though. Like, all over the freaking Alabama rig just for it to get banned in tournaments. I think that's just all that fit over it. Good grief. But so, dude, you've been around the block.
I grew that. I actually took that.
Go ahead.
Just to show how little I understood it, that channel, I was doing that for a dealer who was sponsoring me at the time, a boat dealership, and I was doing boat dealers like videos and stuff. And I was doing, there weren't many how-to on like sonar back then, and that's when I was pretty dialed with the Lowrance stuff. So I was putting up videos on that, and I actually built up this following. I had like a pretty good subscriber list, but it's through the dealer. I mean, I could have transferred that over to me, but I took the work and I was one of the early people with a decent following. But I'm like, well, that's for the dealer, and I just like shuttered that one and like put it to the wayside, then started over because I thought, well, whatever, I can just replicate this again. So I basically walked away from. I already had the inside track, and like, YouTube, what are you gonna do? Monetize it? I mean,
and here we are. How times have changed, where it's basically almost like a requirement for these pro anglers to have a YouTube channel. I think I could count more on how many pros don't have YouTube than do now.
Yeah,
it's kind of nuts. Through that, I mean, being a coach, traveling with all these people, working on the industry side, I think you've seen almost every point of view of the fishing industry. And so I guess in that regard, for somebody that's looking to either get in as a pro or get in the fishing industry, I've had this question a lot, and I'm still rather fresh into the industry, but what would your advice be for somebody that's trying to get into the fishing industry, that's trying to either figure out their lane or just get a foot in the door in general, because it's not exactly an easy industry to get started in?
Yeah, you're talking about going pro or actually work in the industry itself, like in the bait and boat kind of side of it?
Let's go industry side. Like for somebody that may not want to take the pro route, they might be an avid, but they want to be on the back end side.
Yeah, and honestly, like a lot of it's kind of funny. Maybe if I had it all to do over again, maybe I would have went the industry side, just because if you really love to fish, like the guys that are doing it, like just going out and fishing and filming all the time, you get to literally do that all the time. So it's, and I would say it's pretty democratized right now. Like it's in a meritocracy. If you're out there putting out good content, like they will find you. It's probably the easiest time to get in. If you love to fish, if you can either market products or just entertain people and you build an audience, if you communicate well, like they're going to know it. There's the micro niches where guys are really dialed into maybe just like a regional, like this is the expert for kayak fishing in mountain lakes, or this is the guy who's like, man, he catches the biggest spots, or this is the topwater guy. All he does is catch topwater fish all the time. That micro niche. Or you can be like the Millikins of the world or something that get these huge followings. And the Googans, I mean, the companies are taking note. So, like, there's no better time. And if you love to do that, like, basically put out the content, put it out there. And it used to be like 20 years ago, if you wanted to contact somebody at Berkeley or Ranger Boats or Phoenix or you name it, like, good luck. You'd have to work your way up just to get a contact. These days, you go on social media, you follow them, hit a message, and it's pretty easy to say, like, oh, this guy, if he's got 20,000 followers, he's doing something. If he's got 100,000 followers, like, dang, they probably already know about you. But so it's pretty easy to go out there and just show that, to approach a company and say, I love your product. I use it. Here's a couple videos of me using it. Interested in doing something together. And the world's wide open for guys who want to do it.
Yeah, and I feel like, with social media, it definitely makes things a little easier, and especially if you have the ability to get to places like the Classic or an ICAST, that's really a chance for you to get into, those doors where it's, you can actually meet, like the marketing directors of Pure Fishing. They go to those events. Like, you can actually get face to face. Now, an actual meeting and sit down, that might be a different story, but the fishing industry is unique in that regard, where you can go see the legit people behind the brands at these events that are even open to the public. And can say that for pro anglers too, where you can't just go to the Bassmaster Classic of basketball and go meet LeBron James. Like it's not our sport is very unique in that regard. So it's there's that portion. But I'm also just trying to find gigs like for these brands too. I feel like that's another great approach, and I think one that's underutilized on both regards, whether it's to be working in the industry as a whether it's in marketing or if it's brand develop or product development or whatever it might be, versus also as a creator or a trying to be sponsored. LinkedIn, I feel like, is a very underrated avenue to approach these different brands.
Yeah, that's where it's funny. I'm in the business world. They live there. That's their like us scrolling all the podcast of fishing or the bass fans of the world and the Instagram and stuff. They're living there. That's where their news sources come. That's where you network, and definitely underutilized in the fishing world.
Yeah, for sure. And so Tom, before we let you go here, we're going to wrap things up here in about 5 or 10 minutes. We got a question here from BassFanatic, who, funny enough,
Scott Martin.
Yeah, I don't know. We still don't. We talked about this a bunch, but in our fantasy fishing shows, we had a guy that literally like knew everything about every location and was on the ball. So he jokingly, our friend Brendan Chapman from Do It Molds, called him Scott Martin. So ever since then, BassFanatic in our comment section, we just call him Scott Martin,
and he doesn't denounce it either.
Yeah, he has not denied it yet. So we keep calling him Scott. And so he's asking, are you fishing any of the Texas Gene Trail, Bass Champs, or the Brandon Belt stuff that's going on in Texas? We have our lag here.
Yeah. So I'm not fishing those. As a pro, I think you might be able to fish the Brandon Belt, but the other ones, I don't believe you can. Most of them. My brother fishes them though, and he's won a little bit of money in a few of those. So there will be a Redington there, just the smarter one. So it's probably worse for him than it's my brother and not me.
That's funny. So wait, here's what I don't get. So usually is it a level of participation, or is it a dollar winnings amount that is like the threshold for you to not compete at the local level?
Yeah, it's more typically it's entry fee. It's the entry fee, and it used to always be if it was like a $5,000 or higher entry fee in the past year or something. So,
gosh, I just don't see that part is weird to me too. Like I feel like if you've won a certain amount of money, maybe, but like any person that has the funds can go and pay a $5,000 entry fee. Doesn't mean if you don't have a good track record, that just means you're a great donator. So I feel like you'd be more than welcome to have those people in that tournament trail. That doesn't make any sense to me. Where it's like, yeah, if you're, Polnick, Wheeler, somebody that is like winning on a consistent basis, maybe that might make sense to not go fish those trails. But I always found that to be very interesting of certain trails not allowing certain guys in. It's, I don't know, weird feelings about that.
Yeah, I like it, especially in the fall. I'd love to mix in with some of those. I mean, you just want to stay fresh doing it, and it's fun. It's like you're not competing for points. Like half these guys, I mean, it's all the guys that you broke in with back in the old Redmans and BFLs and Toyotas and stuff. So, and it's other guides and stuff. So and plus, I know when I was trying to move up, it's nice to be able to measure yourself a little bit versus the top guys. I will say though, from my perspective, so my son, his freshman year of high school, did the high school fishing for a little bit, and it's like no win. So. And we did all right, but the like if you win it, you top 10, then it's like, well, it's the pros is captain, so like what do you expect? And it's like and I wasn't too worried about that part. Like I'll take the heat on that, but there was so much pressure thinking, man, if we bomb, everybody's gonna be like, seriously, dude, this guy's a pro, and they finished like bottom 10. So it's like
you can't win.
You can't win either way. Yeah.
Hey, there's good days and bad days.
There's a few of those people in this industry right now that are gonna have a tougher road than most. Like, and I think about like a Vegas, Mike Iaconelli's kid. I think about like Hillary Martin. Like there's there's people that are gonna, they're not gonna be able to win either way for a while, because it's gonna be, oh, you won, of course, Ike's your dad. Or then it's like, if you don't do well, like, come on, Ike's your dad, you got to do better. There's some people that are just going to have some hardened roads in regards to that. But I think I love seeing the heritage brought up through that, though, through the families, and seeing, the Alton Jones Juniors, those, I feel like those kind of family lineages, carried on through professional bass fishing as we go on year after year. I love to see those personally. See those dynasty families that are rolling through professional bass fishing.
And they do get a head start, but I'll say this, especially with sponsors. So that's huge, getting their feet wet there. But I've heard this said before, but there's no trust funds in sports. Basically, it's like Bronny, like, yeah, he got drafted to Lakers, so LeBron, and that's a rarity there. But I'll tell you what, if he can't play defense, if he can't shoot, he's turning over. He's not playing unless, maybe LeBron demands it. But, that's the only situation. I don't care if you're –
he got paid, though.
It's Bobby Witt Jr. Bobby Witt Jr. is like the best shortstop in the majors almost now. It's because he's hitting. It's not because he's Bobby Witt's kid. And it's not only is there no trust funds, but you are trying to take from someone else the same thing that they want. So it's one of those that, like nobody's laying over. Nobody's handing it to you. And so it's hard for all of us to accept sometimes that, these other guys are pretty damn good. And it's like they're out there. We like to think that, well, they just, if I could fish every day or they, I had the sponsors or whatever. No, it's the best. I don't care. It's you think you're good at high school baseball or something, then you go to the next level, or you meet an NFL player or something. Their shoulders are, they're the same height as you, but their shoulders are twice as wide, and they can lift up a Buick. They're just, it's the top level of anything. They're just rare birds. And in fishing, it's the same way. These top of the line guys are, you've met them. We've been around, and we've had those days where you taste it. They're damn good.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. And the one thing we've talked about in the past is, alike the big four sports especially, everyone has a different path. And trying to judge your path based on somebody else's is, one, you're just going to waste your time, because that's life. Life is, you're not going to have the same path, privileged or not privileged, as somebody else. So if you're spending your time whining, you're just spending your time losing. But I'll say the one caveat to this, I will say, is Travis Kelce, because the NFL is going to do everything in their power to keep him around, to keep Taylor Swift at football games.
Yeah.
That's about it. They're going to try to do everything in their power.
Well, that's like fishing. That's social media draw right there.
That's right. Yeah. I bet you if I'm an NFL owner right now, I'm going to my players at team meetings over camp and be like, find the most famous celebrity girl that you can date, bring them to games, because it's bringing in ticket sales.
In all retrospect, what would happen to bass fishing if Taylor Swift dated a bass fisherman? Like, here she is at like morning lunch in the morning, right? Like Fox Sports 1 or whatever, like outdoor TV, whatever the Major League Fishing streams there's on. I can't think of it off the top of my head. Like, imagine the viewership there. It'd be incredible. You'd have all these pro-environment, PETA loving hippies, right? Like, starting to love bass fishing, and now the whole world's flipped upside down.
This is the solution we needed.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of pros would be annoyed with the new playlist for the morning before takeoff and be full of Taylor Swift. I don't think that would go over very well.
Pretty funny.
Yeah, that would be quite interesting. That's a whole other rabbit hole that we can go on for another hour. And so we'll save that for part 2, Tom. But appreciate you taking the time out. It's good to get you on here. And will I be seeing you at ICAST next week?
You'll be seeing me in upstate Michigan, thankfully, next week. So I'll let you take one for the team on that one.
Yeah. I'll hold down the fort for you, man.
Yeah.
But for real, thank you so much for taking.
Yeah, that's
the time
always. I
out,
heard.
man. Go catch them, Michigan.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Drive safe.
Yeah, and enjoy ICAST. Like I heard you guys talk about that is like the biggest family reunion. It is. I do miss it from that. Miss the fact I'm going to be down there. It's the fishing family reunion. Everybody who's who in the industry, I guess, except for me and maybe Andy, are not going to be there. But all the rest of y'all have a good time for us.
Well, we'll pour one out for a couple of you guys, and we'll have a good time nonetheless. And we'll see you guys there next year. But catch them up in Michigan, man, and we'll be talking to you real soon.
All right, thanks, guys. Enjoyed it.
All right, we'll see you, Tom. All right, folks, there you have it, Mr. Tom Redington. Dude, it's crazy. When talking to Tom leading up to this, we'd spent some time down in Texas when Berkeley did their forward-facing event down in Houston at the Space Center. Between that and also talking on here, he's touched at like almost every corner of the fishing industry, which is pretty impressive. The knowledge and the experience he's racked up through that and with fishing, and it would be cool to, when we get a part 2 with Tom, to talk about from the moment he stepped foot in the fishing industry to now, how different and how much more opportunity there is, and not just fishing, but the outdoor industry, especially now with technology, social media. Because I can tell you, for these brands, like some of the biggest things that wasn't a big thing, I feel like, even 5 years ago, was the need for, 1, content creators, 2, photographers, videographers. They're deploying these new positions that 5-6 years ago wasn't really a big thing, and it's crazy how rapidly it's changing now. So it's cool to see that, though. So I would love to see kind of his progression, already seeing what his takeaways would be. But thanks again to Tom for taking the time out and joining us on the show tonight. And tonight is not over. We have another great guest joining us, a recent champ from Wheeler Lake, the Bassmaster Elite event.
Long overdue.
Yeah,
awesome
I'm hyped to talk to this guy because, one, we had Carl on the show last week. Was it last week? 2 weeks ago?
Last Tuesday.
Was it last? Okay, I was gonna say, I thought I was crazy for a second. But we had Carl on, and yeah, I am crazy. Fair enough. Carl, we talked about it a bunch, and dude, from the Fear My Heart page, the raw emotion that comes out of there, like that is, you can't fake that. And that is, the win and everything itself is incredible. But that, to me, though, that moment of when everything that you've been working for that long comes out and you can see that, like that, to me, I feel like is the coolest moment in regard from a fan standpoint. So it's, there's a lot to talk about. So I'm going to stop rambling about it. We're going to get him on here in a second, but a quick message from X2 Power, and then we'll be joined by Mr. Cliff Prince.
In the world of battery power, a word to the wise: compromise elsewhere.
All right, and we are back, and let's get on our second guest for tonight. Recent Bassmaster Elite Series champ, Mr. Cliff Prince. What's going on, sir?
What's up, fellas? How are y'all?
Good evening.
Well, I know we're going through it up here in New York in a very rare 90-degree days, muggy, just gross. And I feel like I'm in Florida, but how's it down there for you guys?
Hot. I mean, really hot, like 105. I mean, it's just brutal right now. It's been a hot summer for sure. When we were at Wheeler, it was hot, and I thought it was hot there until I got back home, and it's been brutally hot.
Yeah, who was it? Logan? I remember who it was that they were talking about the story of the gallon of water that they had that the sun melted. Something along was that? And like,
Cooper.
It was Cooper. Yeah.
He said his plastic melted into the carpet. That's unbelievable.
Like if that's hot, and then it was hotter when you got to Florida, I don't ever want to deal with that. I don't know how you do it.
I don't want to go to Florida in July.
No, we've
Good
got
luck down there, bud.
we've got pavers that go from my house out to my barn where my boat's at. And the other day, my wife goes, "Hey, you run out there and get something for me?" Well, I just ripped out without shoes. Well, I wound up having to hit the dirt because I couldn't run across the pavers because it was so hot.
Just about burning the soles off your own feet, huh?
Oh man, it was miserable.
Ooh, fry an egg on that. See how it turns out.
You can see a lot with that. I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
Well, Cliff, before we go too much deeper into the show, one, I just want to say thank you for taking the time out. It's I've been looking forward to getting you on the show since the win, and really getting to see. Obviously we've seen you on live shows before on Bass with when you go to St. John's and other events, but the stuff we saw that Fear My Heart helped to bring out too, and Bass helped to bring out.
Yep.
It's you've become one of my favorites now, just from the pure passion of it. So I gotta say thanks for taking the time.
Yep.
But two is like we did with Tom. You guys are both your first time on the show before, and what we like to do is throw it way back to the very beginning and who is to blame for this lifelong passion.
Oh man, coming up, my uncle was a guide, and I just thought that was the coolest thing that he got to fish for a living. And then when I graduated high school, I got to hang around some buddies of mine that they fished tournaments and stuff like that. And whenever I was in school, I rodeoed, and I was always into competition. I like competition. And then when I started fishing, and then I started fishing tournaments with my buddy, and then his dad, Manuel Spencer, he had fished 2 or 3 classics, and I started fishing tournaments with him. I got more interested in it, and that's how I started tournament fishing, was seeing his passion and learning from him how to find fish, and I've always had a passion for the outdoors, either hunting or fishing. And I loved rodeoing whenever I was doing it, but my mind was always around hunting and fishing. And when I could put competition with my passion also, that was the nail in the coffin that sealed the deal,
Yeah. So about how old do you think you were when you realized you wanted to make this thing a career path?
I was 19 when I started tournament fishing, which is a lot older than the guys nowadays, But when I started tournament fishing and I started competing around here, and I was fishing federation stuff, and then I started fishing weekend series, traveling around the state, and I started fishing opens with my team partner. We'd traveled together, and I fished for 3 years, and I qualified, and I was friends with Terry Scroggins, and I was hanging out with him, fishing with him a lot. And anyway, when I qualified, I really wasn't trying to qualify for the elites, but I was punching the clock for years here in Palatka. And then I bought a portable toilet business so I could travel and fish. And I was kind of at that point whenever I qualified. I'm like, I told my wife, I said, "Do you think we should try it?" And she was like, "We might as well give it a shot." Now it's 13 years later. I wasn't, like I say, I didn't fish the opens to qualify, but when it happened, it just kind of fell into place. I'm like, this is what I want to do.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes you don't know until the opportunity comes knocking.
Yeah. Nowadays everybody was pretty much fishing the elite, or the opens, or trying to get to the elites. But whenever I fished, there was, 3 or 4 guys that were trying to get there, but a lot of the guys didn't take their opportunity whenever they got there, So it wasn't pursued after as much as it is now, because I think it's to do with the younger anglers that are coming up from the juniors to the high school to the colleges. We're seeing all of that come to a head now, and all those guys, they're like, this is what I want to do, because there's that opportunity to grow up fishing and tournament fishing. And I think that's where we're getting the more of the drive, is because we've gotten younger kids into fishing, earlier, tournament fishing.
Yeah, that was the one thing with this whole rookie movement that we've seen. Some of the funnier points funnier comments that I've seen is everyone was talking about get more kids into fishing, and now some of the people see all the young kids getting into fishing, they're like, dang it, stop getting these kids into fishing. They're taking over.
Yeah. Watch what you ask for, right?
That's right.
Yeah. I'm getting my heads kicked in,
Well, I'm curious from your standpoint, something that's been kind of cool that I've seen, and I'm still on the kayak side. Like I fish locally, some of the national stuff, and I've seen a bunch of high school kids get into the local kayak and even on the national kayak scene. Have you seen that from your neck of the woods down in Florida? Younger kids getting into the local tournament scene too.
Not necessarily the kayak tournaments, but I've seen them. There's a lot of kids getting into the, my son come up through the juniors and through the high school, and now he's fishing college. So there's a lot of kids down here. They've got a Florida trail, and I mean there's 200 boats in every tournament now. So, and that's including juniors and high schools. So I mean that's a pile of kids.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think that is one thing, though, personal opinion, I think needs to be refined a little bit, because when you see like the high school championship and they got 500 boats, I feel like that kind of takes away from a championship feel a little bit.
Yeah, that's a hard tournament to win when you got 500 boats, but somebody's going to win. Safety point, definitely. The reins need to be pulled back a little bit, as a safety point, because, some of those lakes that they have to go to are very large lakes to hold those type tournaments,
Right. Yeah. That's a great point.
Yeah.
But hey, that's something we can talk about later. I would love to talk. Yeah.
About that.
Let's talk about Wheeler, man. I want to hear more about this win. And we got a comment in here that's from BassFanatic here. It says, what did you like most about Wheeler besides obviously the win?
What I liked about it is the versatility. You could pretty much fish your strength. You could run way up the river and fish, the river, or you could fish the flats. You could fish offshore. You fish like John Cox with a frog. I mean, it was very. Guys caught them a lot of different ways, and I like going to places like that where you can kind of fish your strength. And I don't like it where everybody's bunched up, fishing same little stretch, or you know what I'm saying. It was pretty interesting the way it fished, because there's a lot of fish in that lake, but there were small key areas that had a lot of fish, that fishery surprised me to the quality. It really did. I knew that it had grass, and then some of it had died back, and I mean there was some fish in that place. Of course I'm going to say that because I won, but I mean there was a lot of fish caught that week for as hot as it was.
Yeah, well, and the way that's set up and the way we were watching you fish on live, a bunch of people were like, wait, this makes perfect sense. Like for like what we've seen you do on St. John's.
Right.
From your perspective, did it set up very similar to the way the St. John's River does?
Yeah. I found those fish when the current was running just a little bit, and here on the river, we fish shallow shell bars, with current, and that was the same type deal there. It was a shallow, hard spot, shell, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, it's basically the same type scenario, which we don't have any grass here anymore. They had some grass there, but it was basic 101 fishing for me.
Yeah, so that kind of helps that you feel at home for a practice like that. Probably not making too many casts though, right? You're probably spending most of your time idling and looking for those areas versus trying to catch one in it. When I found those fish the first day,
I mean, it was hot, and a buddy of mine called me, and I was on the phone with him, and I was just, I was trying to, everybody was fishing the channel, the edge of the channel.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a couple of 100 yards in, and I said, if I can find a ditch or something in the flats that's not obvious to everybody, maybe it'll be a little something different. And I was on the phone with him, and I just happened to look up, and I seen a shad run one way, and then I seen another one run the other way. I'm like, well, might ought to stop and make a cast there. And I got off the phone with him, and I made a cast, and I got a bite. I shook it off because there was a couple other guys there, or close. And then I threw up there again. I had another bite, and I'm like, I just made a waypoint and I left. I'm like, I don't need to see anymore. That's a spot. There's more than one here. And then the last day of practice, my wife was with me, and it was about 1-2 o'clock, hot. I mean, just boiling hot. And I'm like, are you ready to go? Because I need to get back. We were staying about an hour and 15 minutes away.
Oh shoot!
I need to rig some tackle and stuff. And she goes, let's ride down here. I said, well, let's go check that one spot where I got a couple of bites. I wanted to idle it just to see if I could see anything. And when I shut down, I looked up, there was a local boat there. And I'm like, oh, he's pretty close to that waypoint. About the time I seen him set the hook, and he had his trolling motor on spot lock, and he was standing in the back of the boat. And I mean, literally, he was catching them every cast. And I seen him weigh one, so I knew it was a good one. I was far enough away from him. And I just kind of like, well, this is probably where I'll start, because the other two places that I had were 12 or 13 pounds, if I catch the best 5, I felt like. So I started there the next morning. It took me 3 casts, and it was 5 casts. I had it 17 or 18 pounds, and that was pretty much the way it went. It was nuts in the morning there.
Yeah. Did you have that? It looked like you had it mostly to yourself too throughout the tournament.
I did, man. When I caught, I didn't know how much weight I had because I didn't weigh any of them. I had a young boy in my boat. He was 18 years old. He was a sophomore in high school. And I said, man, I hate to do this to you, but I said, it's going to get really boring today. And he goes, what do you mean? Because, we were catching them every cast. And when I caught my last, what I figured was close to 4 pounds, I said, I'm not making another cast. And I put this fish in the live well, and I call a 2.5 pounder, and I stand up, and I've got my power poles down. I stand up, and there's a half acre of fish come up, and they're chasing gizzard shad the size of my hand, and I'm like, I didn't know they were here that good. And I told him, I said, man, I'm not making another cast in them today. I said, I've got, I'm not going to be leading it, but I said, I'm not going to be in last place. And I said, this is going to have to last me for 4 days because I don't have anything like this anywhere. So I just pretty much stayed there all day. And if somebody started fishing my way, I just started fishing towards them and just trying to keep them away, because it was slick calm. There was no wind, and you could see those gizzard shad running from 200 yards away if you knew where to look. And so I just pretty much stayed there and kind of to see if anybody else was going to try to get there. I was shocked nobody else tried to get there.
Yeah.
And the next morning I was boat like 90 something, and I'm like, oh, man, I don't know if I'll get there or not. Nobody was there. And that second morning, in 30 minutes, I pretty much had my weight, and then I caught a couple of really good ones about 9 o'clock, and then I was done again. And I'm like, I told my cameraman, I said, this fixing to get real boring, man. I said, you might as well set that camera on the carpet.
Break out the PB&Js. It's lunchtime at 9 a.m.
And I just stayed there, and just, kind of kept everybody at bay. Nobody really tried to come in there. Caleb Summerall was there, and there were several guys there, but they never come over. And then by the third day, everybody was pretty much honoring what I had going. And then the third day was the really good day. It was slick calm that morning, and it was nuts. I had 26 that day, and I lost another 20-pound bag in that stretch of time that I had the 26. They were chewing that day. I mean, it was crazy.
What do you think? Because obviously, when you look at your 4 days, it's like a mountain peak. Your day 3 compared to the other ones.
Yeah.
What do you think was the factor?
You can, for whatever reason, the bigger fish bit when it was slick calm. For whatever reason, about every morning when I got there, the first 2 mornings, there was a little bit of ripple on the water, and they were biting. You know, I caught them good, but that third morning, and every day about 8:30, the wind would quit. The first 2 days, I mean, it would get slick calm. That's when I caught my good ones both days, the first and second day. The third day, it was slick calm when I got there. So the big ones were already biting, and it was literally every cast. And when I got to my spot, my first cast on the juice, I lose a 4.5, and I'm like, golly, you know, and I throw back up there, and then I catch a 5, and I'm like, all right, now we're good, you know. And then it was like
the pain away.
Yeah. You know, I'm like, all right, we made up for that, you know. But that day, and then the third day, the wind was blowing more, and it didn't stop blowing that day. It kept blowing all day. And for whatever reason, I just, you know, there was always about 8:30, 9 o'clock. Between 8:30 and 9:30, I would always catch a good one. And the last day, they just didn't. I guess I hit on them enough and caught enough of them that. And I mean, I was getting some bites. They were just nipping at it, and you know, and stuff like that. And I tried other stuff. I just couldn't get it through the grass to present it to them where they'd eat it.
What on that last day?
Mm-hmm.
Did you have any voices in your head going at any point in time?
You know, I knew I had a good lead. You know, and I'm like, if I catch anything over 10 pounds, you know, somebody's going to have a really good day. And I said, if I get around the 13, you know, and I was borderline right there till the end of the day. I caught one good one that caught a 2.5 pounder that got me to 15. And, you know, I mean, when I caught that last one about 1:30, I'm like, man, somebody's going to have a really, you know, better day than I had to beat me, you know. So I knew there was a possible chance of a 30-pound bag, you know, because that third day, I possibly could have had that, you know, if I'd have landed everything that bit, you know. I could have had a little bit better because there was a couple of fish there that I could have caught, but I really didn't know I had that much weight. But the last time I went in and called and I couldn't see any white in the bottom of my live well, I said, we're good for today. We're not
Absolutely
fishing no more. I said, you know, there's a good bag in there, you know.
Can you imagine being one of the guys that had like 23, 24 pounds at Lake Fork?
Oh yeah.
And here's Cliff with 26 on Wheeler.
Yeah.
Oh, that's demoralizing, but it's impressive though, dude. Like, and the way you're catching was basically just mostly a jackhammer, right?
Yep. I caught him with a jackhammer with a Bass Assassin swim bait on the back of it, and that's just, you know, everybody says, well, why that? That's what I throw here, you know, and that's my confidence. That's what I catch them on here, doing basically the same thing, you know. You know, I don't catch a lot of fish doing that. I usually catch good ones. It's not a bait that you come here and, you know, and expect to catch a limit, but you know, to catch a good one doing that, you know, fishing shallow bars or shell, you can catch a good one doing that, you know, dragging that thing and hopping it, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and kind of walk us through the setup for that rod. I know the chatterbait rod, I feel like, is still a topic of conversation nowadays between the glass or composite versus.
Yeah, you know, Brett Hotz made the chatterbait, you know, the most popular one of the, you know, that's his deal, and I've never felt his rod. I'm sure it's a pretty soft tip, you know. And the rod that I use is a 7.3 medium all-purpose Fitzgerald, and it's got a pretty soft tip on it. And you know, you can put braid on it if you want to take some of that out. But I always throw my chatterbait on fluorocarbon, and I just like it where the rod loads up, you know, where they can eat it. You know, it's kind of my opinion of chatterbait is almost like a swim bait. You want them to have time to eat it before you set the hook. If you do, a lot of times you miss them. And that was really key with these fish, because for whatever reason, I mean, some of the casts I would make, they would bite it 4 times before they'd actually eat it. And if I tried to set the hook before they actually loaded up on it, you'd pull it away from them and they wouldn't eat it. They knew it wasn't the real deal, or for whatever reason, they didn't want any erratic action. They wanted it real slow, real subtle. That's when I caught the better ones anyway. Some of the smaller fish ate it before it hit the bottom. You know, but there was just a pile of fish there. It was the good Lord showed me where to throw it. I can tell you that, because that was a place that you know, it was a very special place that you don't find every day.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, can you dive into like the reel, the gear speed, and then what pound fluoro you use?
Using 17-pound Seagar Tatsu, and I was using a 7.4 Karada. I would have liked to have used a 6, but I like a 7 because I can control the speed a little bit better. And if a lot of times when they eat a chatterbait or a swim bait or something like that, they swim towards you and you have to make up some ground. So you need a little bit. I don't like an 8, and I like a 6, but a lot of times you can't catch up to them.
Right.
So 7.4 was what I used with 17-pound. I used a little bit of 15, but I like the 17. That way I could, you know, if I got him on, I could pretty much boat flip him if I wanted to.
Yeah.
See, I love that, because I feel the same way when it's got the too slow of a gear ratio and you can't catch them. One, you just feel like a dummy, and you probably look like a dummy because you're just trying to.
Yeah. Even with the 7, sometimes, you know, if it's on a long cast and you got a lot of line off your spool, it's a lot of times it's hard to catch up. But I feel like an 8. And here was the deal. If you threw it out there and just wound it back, I couldn't get a bite. I had to throw it out there and let it hit the bottom like a worm, and just kind of hop it up and then get it going, and then just slowly crawl it on the bottom. They wanted it close to the bottom, if not touching. You know, and I felt like an 8. I just couldn't control the speed of it as well.
Yeah. Do you think a lot of people still see the chatterbait as chuck and wind versus it being actually rather versatile in regards to the cadence of the slow roll on bottom versus also being able to hop it almost kind of like a rattle trap, like yo-yo in it, different things you can do with it?
My experience with it is almost like a swim jig. You don't want it too fast. You want it down where you can't see it. You know, you want to let it sink a little bit. And that's when I get my most bites. I know a lot of guys crank it just underneath the surface and stuff at times that works, but for the most part, when I'm using it during the spawn or a shad spawn type thing, I like it a little closer to the bottom.
Makes sense. So now, with how you fish, we've seen you fish like that on St. John's, on Wheeler.
Mm-hmm.
Would you call yourself an offshore guy? Like, you like to fish that way?
Oh, I love fishing offshore. I love using my electronics. You know, I didn't use them there. You know, I was triangulating like the old school days. You know, I was using my GPS to get me to where I needed to be, but I had a couple of stacks and stuff on those plants and stuff that I was lining up, and I knew exactly where I needed to get to make that exact cast. And I mean, it wasn't that I didn't want to use my electronics. I just felt like those fish were probably pressured, and anything I could do staying away from them, turning my electronics off, I felt like that would help me get more bites.
I totally agree with that. I'm sure you do too, Andy, from the regard of when you're shallow, when you turn your electronics off. I don't know if it's a confidence thing, because you hear people talk about how oh, biologists like fish can't feel the sonar, and they say certain things like that. But then you turn this thing off when you're shallow and you start getting more bites. I don't know if that's just a confidence thing, but it's also like, are you sure? Are you sure about that? It sure feels like these fish, they feel it.
Yeah, you have your trolling motor in the water, or either climbing up on the back of your boat whenever you're swimming or whatever. You can hear that thing ticking. You can hear that thing pinging. And I'm sure if I can hear it, they can, or feel it. Their lateral line can feel a lot. I've got a fish in a tank out here. That's something he can feel you walking from my house to the barn, and he knows when you're coming because he's up in the corner. Won't you to throw him something in the tank?
That's awesome.
So,
does he have a name?
Oh yeah, well I hadn't named him, but I've had him in there for about 5 years. He's pretty cool, man. I fed him some worms earlier today, and he'd come out. You can hold it up over the top of the water. You say a fish can't see, they can see, because I can hold it up over the water and he'll eat it out of your hand out of the water. So I mean he can see. He can definitely sight fish or sight eat, because that's something that can see it before it hits the water.
Now, are you product testing with this fish?
No. I don't catch him. I don't catch him out of my tank.
That's cool though. The interactions has got to be cool enough in itself.
Oh yeah, it's pretty cool. That's my fishing barometer. I can tell if the fish are feeding or not before I go to the river. I go out there, and if he's just laying on the bottom and he don't come over to the side of the tank, I'm like, well, we might as well wait a little while, because if he's feeding, they're feeding. It's feed time.
That's cool. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah,
that's pretty smart.
Yeah.
We have a buddy here in Buffalo that, and Andy can confirm this. He never catches any of these fish. Has his own little pond. He basically just toys with them with top water and feeds them.
Yeah. I had some in my pond I could feed with my hand, and I think some otters got in there and took care of them. But he was pretty cool. You'd walk out there, you'd open the gate, and you'd seen waking coming. It's pretty cool.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
Yeah.
You need to make that a content series, Cliff. Like, you need to give him a name, and he'll be social media famous.
All right, I can do that.
I mean, look what happened when John Cox was trying to save the 10-pounder in his bathtub.
Yeah. Oh, I know, man. That was crazy. You ever seen him feeding cake?
Cake? No. That sounds like something John could do, though.
He'd eat it. Yeah.
I feel like the options are endless.
Yeah.
But so one thing I wanted to ask you tonight was, the one thing people talked about with this win coming at was it 13, 15 years in?
I started in 2012. Started fishing the elites in 12.
Okay. So with that, I mean, there definitely had to have been some trying times. So I'm curious with you on what might have been the lowest low, like from a mental standpoint, and also what was one thing. Obviously, this win is probably it from a positive standpoint.
Oh yeah.
But what was the one thing that for you that stands out that made you keep going?
I mean, when I first started every year, I pretty much have an opportunity to win one or two. And the last couple of years, it's kind of gotten worse and worse. Not necessarily my performance, is just the competition level, I think, has really stepped up with all the young guys and stuff like that. I mean, we've got some hammers on the tour right now, and they will flat sure take your money. But I don't know, right before this event, my daughter's fixing to get married this weekend, and before this event, I was having my before Wheeler, I was having my worst year ever. And still, even at this last event, at Smith, I did terrible. And it's not that I'm not, it's not that I'm not using forward-facing sonar and stuff like that. I'm not blaming it on that. It's just that I've just have not had a really good year. But before this event, before Wheeler, I told my wife, I said, we've got 4 events and I haven't paid for them yet. I said, I could probably take that money that I'm going to spend on entry fees and what I'll spend traveling. I said, I can probably pay for most of Gracie's wedding with that money. And she goes, no, we're not going to quit now. We're going we're gonna see it to the end. I'm like, all right, well, as long as you're in, I'm in. And that's when I won Wheeler, you know, that 2 weeks after that. So, and I didn't quit.
Awesome, dude.
You know, I mean, it just get to a point where you're like, I'm tired of getting my head bashed in, you know, and just having one of those years, you know. It's not that I've you know, wanted to quit. It's just like, why abuse myself anymore? But you know, it was winning Wheeler was definitely a turnaround for 180 degrees from what the first of the season had been like.
Yeah, and with that, obviously, it's no secret that obviously times are changing in regards to how events are being won, how lakes are being approached.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
are you taking any like time when you're not, you know, at events or practice, things like that, to try to work on advancing or changing any or adjusting any part of your game?
Not really. I mean, I had a guy call me before Wheeler, and you know, and says, what do you think about Wheeler? And I'm like, what do you mean? And he goes, have you done any research? I said, no. He said, what do you think you're going to do? I said, I'm going to go there with an open mind, and I'm going to go finding the way I want to catch them. And he goes, well, good luck. And anyway, I, you know, kind of some of those lakes with Smith, I kind of knew it was going to be a forward facing deal, and Wheeler, I really didn't know. I mean, I had it on, you know, during practice for sure, but to find stumps and that sort of thing. But I'm not approaching these tournaments any different. I was one of the first ones to get, you know, forward facing sonar on my boat. I've been with Garmin when they come out with it, and I was one of the pros because I live here in Florida that they put it on their boat at ICAST. And I was one of the guys that went out and showed everybody, me, Scott Martin, and I can't remember who else was there, but I remember Scott and I were there, and we were one of the first ones to get it. And the first tournament that I went to after ICAST was South Dakota. We went to Wisconsin, I think, and then we went to South Dakota. And I told Bernie, I said, I had a practice like was unbelievable. I said, man, I'm going to win this event. You know, I said, man, it's crazy. I can see them out there in front and throw to them and catch them. Well, I didn't know that there was no trees in South Dakota that would block that 20-mile-an-hour wind. And I didn't know I wasn't good enough with it to stay up with them in the wind. I couldn't even stand up where I was catching them, you know. Right. So I had to adjust the way I was fishing, you know.
That's a whole different sport in itself.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, it was, you know, in practice, I had an awesome practice. Every point I went to had them. They'd have be 3 or 4 big smallmouth. I could throw a swim bait out. I could throw a swim bait of any kind out there, and they'd come up and eat it. And I'm like, I told Bernie, I'm like, man, this is like, I said, there's no way I can't have a good event. And I don't even think I cashed a check when the wind started blowing, because it's a whole different ball game with that wind trying to do that deal. And those guys are good with it. They're a lot better than I am with it.
And now you got them doing that in 5-footers.
Yeah, that's unbelievable how they can do that.
Yeah. It's intriguing to see how things adjust from the professional tournament side of things, but I absolutely love. Sorry, go ahead.
These guys are approaching, you know, practice way different, you know, than when I first started, you know, because I mean, you see guys that never leave the middle of the lake, you know, they just stay out there until they figure out what they're doing, you know, and that's just not the way I was brought up trying to find fish. You know, if you went out there and they weren't on the points or, you know, creek channels or something like that, you kind of went to the bank type thing to see if you could find something, you know.
Right. You're saying they're out in the abyss, looking in the abyss until they find it.
Yeah, a lot of those guys, I mean, they live and die with it, and it's working, you know.
Do you think we'll see a shift in like how those fish position? Like,
no, I know that, you know, like here on the river, when you start putting pressure on fish, they'll move. They'll literally, you might pull up there and catch one or two, but they'll all leave. And I got a feeling that those deeper fish are probably going to do the same thing. You're not going to just be able to just follow them around and catch them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got to feel like it's when we talk about evolution of fish, there's the saying of Mother Nature always corrects itself. So
well, for instance, at Detroit, St. Clair, the first time I went there, I caught those fish off of 2D. I would drift around out there, let the wind blow me around, and I would see those fish on 2D, and I'd just pitch out the back of the boat, and I'd catch every one of them, And now that we've got forward facing, when I seen them with the forward facing, if you threw out there and he didn't come to it, he would disappear. He would leave. So I just had a feeling that they were getting conditioned to that, having that thing ping on them and then you were casting to them. Maybe that's just me. I don't know, but I never seen a fish leave on 2D, but I sure did see them leave watching them on forward facing. I seen them. Yeah. You'd ping them and then they just disappear. They that grass that grows up off the bottom, I don't know what it is, but shrimp grass or whatever it is, but they would definitely bury themselves up in it and disappear.
Well, isn't there an argument that could be made too that fishing pressure has probably done a lot to it besides forward-facing sonar, right? Like there's so many more people coming up and fishing the North Country now than there ever have been.
When the first few times I went to St. Clair, I never remember seeing, catching a big one and, his jaws tore up from being caught. And the last time I was there, I caught a lot of fish that had been caught, which is a good thing. It shows that they're surviving being caught, but definitely the fishing pressure's definitely changing the way those fish feed and act to a boat. Yeah. Fishing pressure.
Yeah, it definitely seems like they're almost getting accustomed to the fact that they're like, hey, there's this big shadow over my head, these floating shadows, and I'm getting caught every time I'm below them. I should probably stay away from these shadows.
Yeah, when like I say, when the first time I went there, I was out there, right out in the middle of the lake in 20 to 25 foot of water, throwing a drop shot around. And they would, when you'd see them on 2D, they'd be underneath the boat, and you just pitch your worm out the back of the boat. They didn't want you to move it; they just wanted it out the back for whatever reason. And they'd swim up and eat it every time. Now they don't. I don't know that you could do
that. There's been times like fishing with Andy and other folks in their boats where I've had that where it's like they'll have Andy has his 2D deucer connected to the back, so that's like where it's reading off of, and you'll pitch back there. And I've had that same thought of like, for some reason, it's always in the back of the boat you can drop on them, and I've always had this weird, funny feeling in my head of those fish are just like, oh, he went past me. He has no idea I'm here. He hasn't seen me. Look at that, there's bait. And then
food.
Bernie Schultz and I roomed together, and he always told me, he said, every now and then, he said, you just pitch out the back of the boat, because he said those smallmouth are curious, and he was dead on, because I mean they'll actually follow your boat, and that's the first couple times I was there. That's how I caught them, was pitching out the back. I couldn't catch them that casting out the front. They would just seem like they would follow you for whatever reason, just being curious, I guess.
Yeah, I've noticed that up here in New York. I almost went to go say a specific body of water, and I remember you guys are going there, so I'm gonna be smart and not talk about any lake names. But there's been times where I'm on like the Finger Lakes, for example, where I'm in the kayak and you go and it's clear water, and you go and look behind you as you're going down, and you're like throwing hair or top water, whatever, and you look back and you're like, oh, there's a 4-pound largemouth that's just literally sitting there following my boat.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that. There's a 3-pound smallmouth with it too. Where
Yeah.
to your point, yeah, like there's no, especially you feel like when it comes to smallmouth,
Yeah.
throw
Yeah,
it
that's
back.
true. Every now and then he just got to pitch one back there, you know.
Yeah, it's crazy how many when I'm guiding, I'll actually see on like 2D if I'm sitting on my console, like rise up and stop like 10 feet below the boat and then just go back down. You're like, what is that fish even doing? But if you're just curious,
Yeah.
Are you gonna feed me?
Yeah, exactly. Are you gonna throw a potato at the boat?
Yeah.
Yeah. I noticed that this past weekend. I went out there because the past like month and a half I've been basically just fishing shallow, fishing grass type of deal. To the fishing's been calling for it. It's that time of year in New York where every fish is shallow. You can go have that kind of fun. But we're getting to that late summer pattern now where a bunch of fish are going to start roaming, and it's that time to be using forward facing if you're fishing tournament type of deal.
Yeah.
And so I went out this weekend to sharpen that tool and get back in the groove of that.
Right.
And I'm just sitting there rigging up a rod, and I see this pod that I was out. It's the lake where they've all post spawn. It's like they chase bait, same thing you see on Smith.
Right.
And I see this pod there. I have nothing in the water, and this school just immediately is coming to me and immediately beelines for the shadow.
Wow.
So like it's crazy stuff that you can just learn from using the tech.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Like
3 different pods. They just come up and get curious.
Yeah,
I noticed that too, and I just drop right below the boat, and they come up.
Yep. It's cool.
It's crazy the curiosity of these things.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Well, so how you feeling about smallmouth territory?
Man,
Plattsburgh?
Plattsburgh's always kicked my tail because I always try to largemouth fish, and and there's a lot of largemouth in that place, but it's hard to catch a 4-pound largemouth, and there are so many 4-pound smallmouth. It's if Ticonderoga doesn't play, it's just you're just fishing for 65th, and I know that because I've had my teeth kicked in every time I go there. But the St. Lawrence, I've never been a threat to win there, but I've had some good finishes there. Those weights are so tight up there. You just got to figure out how to catch a couple of really good ones a day. And when I say good ones, 4.5 or better, to be over the 18.5, pound mark, you need to be up 19 plus for, and with us going out of Waddington, I don't know. That's makes a lot of guys think about not going to the lake, so that is a pretty good run.
I was gonna say, that's one of the things I was gonna ask you is how many people you think are gonna make that run to the lake now?
I'm sure a bunch of guys are. If you want to win, that's where you got to go. That's pretty much if you want to win, that's where the big ones are for sure.
Yeah, that's what I'll be curious to see, and obviously that's going to be weather dependent, too. I'm sure.
Yeah, sure. That river gets pretty dadgum sporty if that wind blows against that current. It gets pretty nasty. But those guys know how to run it, and there'll be some guys do it, I'm sure, regardless.
Yeah, if your name's ends in Johnston, you're going to end up going.
You're going.
There's only one way they drive. It's just put the hammer down and go.
I do not want to be their camera guy. There's one. I don't want to be a camera guy. Yeah.
So are there a few guys on tour that you guys joke and tease with that you're like, yeah, I don't want to be in his boat?
At certain events, yeah, there's always that guy. Because he's going to run to the other end of the world, But
are there any of them you can call out for fun here?
I'm not going to go there.
No. All right.
From some of my clients being marshals, I have a list of names of guys that I do not want to get in the boat with.
I guarantee you. Yeah, I guarantee you. I always try to take care of my marshals,
Yeah. Well, I'll say this, and I'll say it because I'd gladly say it to his face. I don't think it's a bad thing. I just thought it was funny. But the most scared I've ever been in my entire life is when I drew Chris Johnson in the St. Lawrence Open.
Yeah.
And of course, that morning we see the most freighters I've ever seen in the St. Lawrence, and I live in New York.
Yeah.
That dude does not slow down for freighter waves. Let me tell you what.
Gosh. Oh man.
I'm just sitting there. The
He
first
said, "What?
freighter
It's a
waves-
Ranger. It'll be all right."
Yeah. Well, so what's crazy is the first time, obviously we're ripping out of Clayton, and of course I'm just holding on, and it's not that bad because it's glass calm, whatever. But we come to this first freighter wave. In the back of my mind, I'm like, of course, obviously, he's going to slow down for these things. And we're getting closer and closer. And I'm like, wait, we're not slowing down. So I tighten my grip on everything, and we just ramp and skip across that sucker. And I look at him, and there's just like nothing. Like, just keeps going.
No,
And I'm
motion
sitting
at all, just
nothing.
fluttering. God.
By the time we got done, dude, my hand was like crimped into this form because I was holding on to the seat so hard.
I guarantee you, man. Yeah, last year when we went, I run back almost to Waddington, and I had I've run a Phoenix. So I was one of the first ones every day to running down that river, and that's what I was always looking for was those freighters, because they'll run behind those islands, and man, you hit one of those waves and not know it. Oh man, that thing. Brutal. Yeah.
No bueno.
You go over one and through the next one.
Yeah. they're you can't mess around with those things, that's for sure. Because it's a good point too. Because if they go around the island, you didn't see it.
Yeah, and
you don't know
still
those
waves,
Yeah, but I will say, boat ride aside, it was a great day on the water. Chris is an awesome dude.
Yeah, he
boat
is.
Ride, a little scary.
Yeah, I like Chris. He's a good dude.
Yeah, it was a fun day.
He's just serious.
He's very. It was really cool. I actually learned a lot. So it's the joking aside, it was fun. But man, I mean, looking ahead, obviously 2 events left, Smallmouth third, but going into next season, I guess you probably would like to see more TVA stuff, wouldn't you?
Yeah, shoot, yeah, man. I'm good at offshore. I'm not afraid of that, and I don't know if we'll go back in July or not, but because there was a lot of guys melting down, but I don't know. We'll see. I like fishing offshore, and that style fits me. I mean, I can catch them a lot of different ways, but that's kind of my cup of tea for sure.
What would you say? Obviously, beyond St. John's River is your favorite body of water to go to.
Mm-hmm. I really like Falcon, and I like the St. Lawrence. Both of those are two of my favorite places to go. If I was going to take a vacation, that's one of the two that I would go to. As far as in the United States, for sure.
Obviously, right now being a touchy subject, but you think we'll ever see bass go back to Falcon?
I don't know. The time I was there, Championship Sunday, we almost couldn't put our boats in the water because the water was dropping so fast. So I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever go back or not. I sure wish we would.
Yeah.
That place was phenomenal. Good gosh, that place got some fish in it. Big ones too.
I'm trying to remember. We had, I don't remember if it was Falcon or if it was
Falcon and Amistad are right there.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. I think it was Falcon. So we had the Strack brothers on at the same time. And they were telling us about a story of essentially them outrunning the cartel on Fletcher's bass boat. I think it was Falcon the one time.
Really?
And I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, if we had a live event now, and you imagine like Matt Robertson on live, and you got the cartel boats out there, I'm like, we have some great TV going on. I don't know if I'd rather watch Christie, Hackney, or Robertson dealing with that situation.
Oh,
that might be why they don't go back. Is that right there? Dangerous.
Yeah, when we went there, everybody was like, "Man, it's going to be bad." And I never had any issues, but I was rooming with Jason Williamson at the time, and we were staying right on the lake, kind of on a hill. and they had one of those towers like you see in like a mall parking lot with the raise up tower, and there was a cop in there 24/7. So, you know, and you'd be there in the evening rigging tackle or something like that, and hear automatic weapons going off on the other side of the lake, you know. Like, oh, well, I don't want to go in that creek, you know, on the other side of the lake.
Oh,
yeah.
So we'll have to get him back on here to tell the story himself. But it was Gary Klein was telling me a story of how he went back into one of the creeks, and basically a guy on a hill came down and told him, "Was like, hey, you better turn around." And I'm not doing this story any justice. We'll have to have it come from Gary, but basically he learned what parts of the lake to fish and not to fish.
Yeah, I think that was Louisiana, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Not necessarily he had run into that same problem at Falcon, but I know he run into an issue in Louisiana one time with the same thing. But
so we need to have that, but we also actually have, you brought him up earlier, Bernie Schultz. Mm-hmm. Bernie agreed that after the northern swing, he's going to come on and share a whole bunch of stories from back in the day that he's experienced and seen. So I'm thoroughly looking forward to that. We're going to make like a category of like wildest, funniest, some of the different things he's seen.
He's been there, seen that, and done that, I can tell you.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy. Like, I hear like all these road trip stories of like guys that have traveled like the opens and stuff, and it's like some people never see anything, and then others will be like, oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe what I saw on the road like 7 miles down past that exit. And they're like, yeah, it's even crazier. I got to the body of water and I saw this happening on the side of the bank, and it's like, oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, I've had some good ones, especially when I first started. When I was rooming with my partner, we went to a tournament. I won't say the state or I won't say the town just because I don't want to bash anything. But he goes, man, I got us a hotel. I'm like, all right. Well, we pull up, and the guy's behind about 2.5 inch thick glass, you know, and he shoves this pan out there. And my partner says, man, how much is it? He goes, $200 week or month. And I'm like, oh boy. So he throws $200 in the thing, and he reels the thing back. And when we get back out there, we're parked out in front of the hotel, and there's a cop sitting there. He goes, boys, I don't think y'all want to be staying here. I looked at Larry. I'm like, man, you sure? He goes, oh man, we'll be fine. We pull around to the back, go in the room. We hadn't no more than shut the door and threw our bags on the bed. We hear thump, 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 thump. Somebody knocking on the door. He goes, hey man, you want to buy a generator? In the box, $150. I'm like, dude, we got to go. I said, we got to go from here. I said, we got to find something else.
At least it was a generator, because I guess it could be worse things. But
it's powerful. You want to buy it back?
Yeah. I got your live scope for you.
Yeah. You want to fish with it this week? I'll sell it to you.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I feel like that should have been the first sign, is the cop telling you guys not to stay there.
Yeah.
That's crazy, man. You guys have seen some weird stuff on the road too. Like what's some of the wildest things you've seen on tour, like on the Elite?
I don't know. That right there is just one that kind of stuck out to me, because it was when I first started, you know, and I was freaking out because I wasn't sleeping at my house, you know. I was sleeping in some strange town I've never been to, but I don't know. Some strange, like I say, when we were at Falcon, I was always tripping, because they're literally all down, you know, you're right on the border, you know, so all the cops were lined up on everywhere that there was any kind of road that butted up to the lake. So it was kind of freaky. And I mean, you'd be out there fishing and hearing gunshots and stuff like that on that side. I'm like, you know, I don't even want to go to the Mexican side of the lake, you know, because you don't know. There's guys over there, and I'm like, man, they're brave. But I definitely didn't run up any creeks on that side for sure. But
sheesh. Oh, yeah. Thanks.
No, I'll catch them on this side.
Yeah. Yeah.
You at least have a chance to see him coming and get out of there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Are you a Airbnb guy, hotel, camping?
Yeah, you know, especially if my family goes, we'll Airbnb or whatever, you know, and just to have a little bit more of a comfortable place to stay. A lot of times, you know, we've been doing it long enough. Bernie's been doing it long enough. We know somebody that lives close or whatever. That's what we like to do, you know. So, you know, get to see friends and hang out and have a safe place to stay is the biggest thing.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's definitely a fun part about it.
Yeah.
Well, Andy, you got anything left for Cliff before we hit him with the last question?
No, you can go ahead and hit him with the last question.
All right, so Cliff, like the first question we had for you, everyone that's new to the show, we like to leave them with one last question to and so that is, if you could sit down with 3 different people, they could be alive 1,000 years ago, be alive now. They don't even have to be the fishing industry. It could be somebody from sports, historical, whomever. What 3 people would you invite, have a steak and a beer, pick their brain?
To pick their brain?
Yes, sir.
That'd be Kevin Van Dam, Rick Clunn, and probably Roland Martin. Because those guys have been there, done that, and caught them from an inch of water to 150 foot of water. So I want to pick their brains and know how they look at a lake, you know, back then versus now, and you know, just see how they dissect and what they say was the difference for them being able to stay and have a career in bass fishing, like they've been a staple for ever since I've been watching bass fishing.
Cliff, I think that was the quickest we've ever had anybody answer that
Absolutely.
question.
I was thinking the same thing.
You know, well, I mean, I'd like to know if I could plug into those 3. I think I'd be a pretty good fisherman at the end of it. You know,
I think one you already are, but then those 3 you come. I think you have a lot of juice in there.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, dude, seriously, thank you so much for taking time out. Definitely want to get you back on here.
Yep.
Are you gonna be at ICAST next week?
Yes, I am. I'm only about 2.5 hours from it, so yeah, I'll be there.
What booth will you be at?
I'll be at Fitzgerald. I'll be at Bass Assassin. I'll be at Owner, Garmin. Those will be the main ones that I'll be around for sure. Yeah.
Well, come happy hour. I will come try to make my rounds and find you. At least introduce myself. But
great.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you taking the time out. Congrats again on the dub. And looking forward to getting you on here again, man.
Anytime. Look forward to it.
All right, Cliff. Thank you, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Good evening.
There you have it, folks. Mr. Cliff Prince,
Awesome.
recent Bassmaster Elite Series champ. And dude, I love hearing these stories of the stuff that you won't hear on Bassmaster Live, the stuff you won't, you know, unless you're, you know, sitting there on the round table drinking beers or something like that, rigging tackle, you know, or on a show, you know, hear about those certain stuff. But Falcon 1 sounds amazingly fun, but also amazingly
terrifying.
Yeah. Terrifying. Yeah. We've that's the one thing I'll say. I'll admit it out loud with my job is, you know, planning these media events, different things for brands. I've had it brought up about when are you going to go back to Mexico? And it's like, I don't want to go back to Mexico. I've never been. I don't know if I want to go. I heard the fishing's amazing, but
is it worth it?
Yeah. How much do I value my life?
Yeah.
Imagine being a kayak back in those creeks.
Oof. You ain't running too far fast.
No. You're like, you better leave this creek. Well, I will in 30 minutes because it's going to take me that long to get here.
Yeah, I'm just curious. Like,
what are you looking it up?
No, I'm just curious to see like when the last tournament was at Lake Falcon.
Was it Amistad that NPFL was at last year? Was it Amistad?
I think they were supposed to. Did they end up going?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they went. I'm pretty sure it's Amistad.
I think you're right.
Yeah, it's definitely been a minute. That's for dang sure. Was it 15 they went to Falcon? I could be wrong.
There's one in 2021. They went in 13.
2021. They went to Falcon 2021? You sure?
No, there was a tournament there, but I don't know what it was. Like, I'm trying to find. Yeah.
No clue.
There's some Lake Falcon guide services. Could you imagine that one?
Lake Falcon Fishing and Protective Services?
Yeah, pretty much.
Jeez. And buy your fishing license and your AR-15s.
Ironically, the guy hasn't posted on his website since 2020.
Ruh-roh.
Yes, big ruh-roh.
No.
Yeah.
Well, either way, great show tonight with Mr. Cliff Prince and Tom Redington. Thank you to both who took the time out to be here tonight. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that show. Looking forward to seeing everybody at ICAST next week, seeing Cliff at ICAST next week. Again, Tuesday Night Live next week is not going to happen. Obviously, with travel, ICAST, all that jazz. So we will be doing a pre-recorded show, doing our best anyway to get a pre-recorded show up and ready for next Tuesday night. Next Tuesday morning. That way you guys do have a show for next week. As always, tune into the Lure Lab. Great show to come this coming week, and I'm sure there'll be more ICAST stuff on the Lure Lab as well, so make sure you tune into that. And Andy, great show tonight. I am about to fall asleep.
Yeah,
right
go
now.
get some sleep.
Yeah. Folks, appreciate y'all, and we'll see y'all on the next one. Peace.